Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Ding dong.
Yes, Connor is not here this week. He was going to be here. We moved the entire show's recording so that he could be here, and then he couldn't be here anyway. So send your hate mail at Connor Ryan 94 on Twitter.
CR21 strikes again.
I approve. I approve of hate mail. Go send them hate mail. This is a DC Comics podcast. We talk about DC Comics every week. It is a week 5. It is a weird week 5. We had a lot of pages to read, but not necessarily a lot of books to read. So it works out, I guess. But it's weird, when I tell you coming up on today's show, we have 3 books. We have Green Arrow, the 80th Anniversary Spectacular. We have the Catwoman Annual 2021. And we have the Infinite Frontier Secret Files issue 1, which is actually a reprint of a 6-part digital series, which, it's 6 parts of about 12 pages or something like that each. But it seemed like it was relevant enough to what was going on with obviously the big new event book that we thought we'd take a look. And besides, it was a quiet week, so why not? Why not have a look?
And I am glad that I read it, because there's some gold in those digital first sometimes. So I just wish the format was better. That's all.
Hey, at least this was in full pages.
Yeah. That's not what I mean. I just because the shorter story.
Oh, right,
You know what I mean? I would have taken full issues, and I would have paid. You know what I mean?
What's weird about it is that it kind of feels like it was maybe designed as an anthology first and then split into a digital series.
Yeah, that, But that said, I did like what I read, and we'll get there when we talk about it. But it's multiversal shenanigans, so of course I love it.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's essential, but we'll get into what it is later. I'm not mad I read it either, for the record. I do think the 2 stories by one of the writers, because there's a couple of pairs. One of them's a little bit wordier than the other writers, and those stuck out to me a little bit. But we do have, obviously, the ComiXology Top 10 to start the show off, as we do. Everyone's favourite segment, of course. Everyone loves it.
Okay. Let's see. I'm pulling up to see what books came out this week, so I don't look like a total idiot. Because Connor's not here to look like an idiot.
There's only 3 books. I mean, you look at a big list.
No, but, I want to guess what else came out this week.
Okay. Well, what do you think number 1 is, then?
What came out? This week kind of was bleak.
That's a week 5. I mean,
yeah.
I'll just say this: it being a week 5 and DC not filling a week 5 with a full week of books means that Marvel does have the advantage here on this top 10.
Yeah. As the number 1 on Marvel.
It is, yes.
Okay. I'm gonna guess X Factor.
It is X Factor. X Factor issue 10 is number 1. Number 2 is Eternals issue 5. I guess they're pushing that really hard because the movie's coming. Star Wars The High Republic issue 6 is number 3. Daredevil 31 is number 4. Cable issue 11 is number 5. Star Wars Dr. Aphra is number 6. That's issue 11. And then we go to Image for Monstrous issue 35. And number 7. Number 8 is Black Widow issue 8. I'm not mad though, it's a Kelly Thompson book. I'm always in support of Kelly Thompson.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get caught up on that. I have Sabrina sitting and waiting when I have time to read. I like Thompson a lot. Number
9 is actually our first DC book, and it's kind of a surprising one. Because, well, it's just surprising.
We only have 3 to choose from. So, is it Green Arrow, 80th anniversary?
It is not.
Ah, damn. Okay. I had 3 choices and I still chose wrong. Is it the Catwoman Annual?
It is not.
It's Infinite Frontier?
Well, technically, only part of it.
Yeah. Oh.
Because it's a digital
first. Pirate?
Yeah, it's the final part. It's the final issue 6 of that digitally came out this week.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing DC has in the top 10. Because number 10 is the Department of Truth.
That's the Tynan book. It's got Bigfoot on the cover this time. I almost bought it just because of that, but I haven't read 1 through 9, so that would have been a mistake.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Teen Titans Academy's at number 15, and 16, 17, 18.
That might be too high.
Catwoman's at number 21.
Yeah, that's too low.
Green Arrow's not even on the first page.
It's a bummer. That said, it is a $10 book. So I don't know.
Yes, at the time of recording, it's at number 30 on their charts.
No respect for Ollie.
I mean, it could be a case of these 100-page specials of like they've went to this well too many times now that they can't make one feel special anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, maybe Batman and Superman could still pull it off, but maybe they've went too far now, and like this has been heartened by just you've done this like 10 times in the last year and a half, so. Or maybe it's just a case of these digitally don't do as well as they do physically because they don't have all the fun covers and whatever else.
Right. That could be that too, or if people want something like that, they'll pick up it physically. If you still have room, which I do not, so I have to be more choosy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just have a spare 100 pages taking up space in that, 30th short box. So.
Yes. So. Not a week where DC set the ComiXology charts on fire at the time of recording. We're recording this on the Friday evening as opposed to the usual Saturday afternoon, and that's the UK times. I suppose it's still afternoon for you. It's
after 12, therefore afternoon.
Yeah, but it's normally morning for you on a Saturday when we record.
No.
This is.
Oh no, I got all my chores done. Wait, what'd you say?
I said it's normally morning on a Saturday when we record.
No, yeah, I thought you meant it's not like it's morning. That's why I agreed. But I got all my chores done before. It was great. You have to rush, listen to music, finish my comics.
I was looking forward to you trying to argue why 10 a.m. on a Saturday was not morning.
No. I thought it wasn't as clear that I was agreeing to, or disagreeing with.
Is that your hearing being weird or me mumbling my words?
Probably both, because since I've gotten earpods, I keep getting alerts that I listen to stuff too loud. And to that I say, Apple, mind your business. And to which my wife will then respond, you remember watching The Sound of Silence? Wait, that was that one, right? There's a med. Shoot, I really liked that movie last year.
Sound of Metal, I think you're thinking of.
Sound of Metal, there you go. Yeah, she likes to use that to keep me in line. Do you want that to be you? And I say no. So I turn down my volume. So could be my hearing, could be, your still slight accent that after almost 10 years, still not used to.
Slight accent? I have a slight accent?
No, I mean, yours is not. I follow this girl on TikTok who has a very, way thicker Scottish accent than yours. So that's why I say slight.
Should I turn the Scottish up a notch for the podcast? I think people.
I mean, if you want, Connor's not here, so.
Today we're going to talk about comic books, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm here to be Matt. I can go super Scottish if you want.
That still just sounded like you, Pete.
That was different. That was objectively different. Just your American ears not being able to pick it up is not my problem.
It's true.
So not a whole lot of news this week, although there was one tidbit, and that is a new design for a Batgirl outfit for Babs, because obviously we just had new outfits for Steph and Cass. They have their now Batgirl variants. I mean, Cass is basically just their old Batgirl outfit. Steph is still spoiler, but has a bat symbol, so it's kind of a mix between her spoiler and Batgirl outfits. So Babs is getting a new outfit, and if you've not seen this is Bruno Redondo, so obviously this is going to be more relevant to perhaps Nightwing, at least at first. And this is got the color scheme somewhat of the Burnside suit, but it's less sort of DIY, but it has a proper cape and cowl, is how I describe it.
I do like how they've made purple and yellow Babs's, because that's a shout to the old 66 show. Bit of the animated series too. So I'm down for that.
Did she have purple in the animated series? She was it black? It was black and yellow in the animated series, was it not?
Did she have a purple cape? Could have sworn her cape and cowl was purplish. It was more of like a blue compared to Bruce's black and gray.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking of her actual outfit because this is very different. This is the suit is purple. I mean, I'm a fan of the black and yellow from like Batgirl Year One. Probably is my favorite, but this looks good. I mean, it feels like it incorporates some stuff from previous versions. But I think the one big thing I did not like about the Burnside thing was, it didn't have the proper kill. It didn't have what felt like a proper bat cape. But I mean, these sketches here, not only do they show her standing tall, but when she's got the cape all extended, it's like it's a bat cape. It's a proper.
Yeah, it's a bat. And her one that Murphy kind of designed seemed like real low key suit, almost like it was not that it was thrown together, but just like a minimalist Batgirl costume. This definitely, like you said, it feels proper.
It kind of was something together in the sense that it was meant to be like her like early days like outfit that was lying around that she put back on because her current suit got damaged or whatever. But that's good. If you haven't seen it, check it out. So you get it on the Twitters or on your favorite comic book news website. I'm sure you can go find the images. But the important part is that the hair's still coming out of the cowl and flowing lusciously. Yep. That's the important thing about Batgirl. Unless it's Cass, in which case it's super ninja. Everything's contained.
Did I get Mandela affected? I guess it's kind of bluish purple. So I pulled up Batman Animated Series Batgirl. I can't tell if it's purple or blue. Man. Well, either way. I like this new suit.
Yes. There we go. Plus the the inside of the cape is yellow, but the outside and the cowl are black, and I think that's what was missing. I think maybe from the Burnside suit was some more dark colors for the contrast.
Yeah, but I feel like that's why they were doing it, though, right? Like they wanted to make it this bright, different, a whole new Batgirl kind of vibe.
I didn't want a whole new Batgirl though, so I prefer this.
I know, but I mean, they take some chances. She's moving to Burnside, which the first time I ever remember hearing about Burnside was when she went there. So
yeah, but this is better, so I like this more.
Gotcha.
All right, that's basically it. That's the news. There wasn't a whole lot of other things to talk about. It makes sense though. Week 5s tend to be quiet. In terms of books, in terms of news, it is what it is. We're at the middle of summer. We're just getting into July. Hopefully, everyone's having a nice, bright, sweaty time. I don't know what I'm trying to say at this point.
It's 108 degrees here right now. So let me convert that into your scale.
It was pretty hot here this week. It's definitely been the hottest this week that it has been all year. This was definitely the first time I'd felt like discomfort.
All right, Pete, you ready for what that is in your scale?
Oh, go on.
That is 42 degrees.
40s. I can't even imagine the heat in the 40s.
Yeah. It was nice earlier this week. We got some rain, thunderstorms, and it was in the 80s, so what would that be in yours? The high 20s. So that was kind of nice, but it didn't last long. We're back to just balls ripping hot. Like sometimes I wonder why my family stayed here. Like you can move. There are other places to live.
I mean, stupidity maybe.
Could be. I always laughed that the rest of my dad's family kept going to San Diego, which is much more. Like it gets warm there, but much more mild than here.
It's not a desert.
No, but it does get the high 80s there occasionally. But yeah, I wonder things.
Yes, there was a lot of disappointment you didn't try those. Was it chicken wings last week? What?
Yeah, I've heard. So I might have to make a trip back out. Chicken strips, world's best chicken strips.
Yes,
I'll never know. I'll never know if that's just a false statement.
I don't know. I've got this sneaking suspicion, in like, I don't know, some random time in like 7 months, you're going to come onto an episode and be like, "Oh, by the way, I tried those chicken strips this week."
They made me sick.
It made me sick. I was out of commission for 3 days. I was at the hospital. I was throwing up everywhere. It was disgusting.
Not even sure they were chicken. Oh man. Oh man. If Ernie's too ever hears this, I'm in trouble.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. A big fan. Big fan of the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which actually is very concerning because if you go back and now he's heard this,
Yeah.
you know, it's going to be like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I hope not. That's why I stay out of Texas.
Mm, yes. I mean, I would have made that joke anyway, but I happen to have just watched that again.
The original?
Yeah, the original. I watched it like 2 days ago.
Who's the character in the wheelchair?
Franklin.
I couldn't wait for him to get it.
Oh yeah, he's annoying as hell.
Oh my god.
He's such an annoying
You want
character.
to root for him, you know? He's got big underdog vibes, but he's literally the worst.
Yep. It's
kind of like what's his name in Friday the 13th, Part 3.
Shelly. You're thinking of Shelly.
Yeah, Tim loves Shelly.
I don't hate Shelly.
Yeah, but I couldn't wait for him to go. I wanted Jason to get him big time.
I don't hate Shelly. Shelly, I think, gets a bad rap. There's a bit more of a charm to Shelly, I think, than Franklin.
Is it the ping pong paddle? The 3D effect? Is that what endears him to you?
No.
Because he kind of is the 3D, the character excuse, right? Like a lot of those shenanigans he gets into is the reason why there's 3D.
I've got the old red and blue 3D version on the Blu-ray. Every time I've tried to watch it for more than 5 minutes, though, I just kind of like, nah, I'll watch the regular version.
Yeah, the old red and blue makes me really sick. So makes me wonder how who was it? Was it Billy Zane in Back to the Future?
Mm-hmm.
Was wearing the red and blue glasses around Hill Valley, or was that one of Biff's other guys?
No, it was Billy Zane. I love the idea though that someone just went, wait, Billy Zane was in Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Because I went a long time without noticing that was Billy Zane that was in Biff's posse. It took a while.
One of Biff's gang members. Wearing the old red and blue 3D glasses, which I can't imagine. God, just how much of a psychopath. A, you're hanging out with Biff. 2, that you wear those around like it's normal.
Yeah, I mean, he already hangs around with Biff, so it clearly his judgment is already a bit impaired.
Yeah, exactly.
And apparently so is his eyesight.
Yes, exactly.
Willingly, may I add.
Yeah.
Green Arrow. The 80th anniversary is super spectacular 100-page extravaganza amazeballs thingamajig. That is what we're going to start off with today. And I have to say, for as far as rosters for the creative teams go for these 100-page specials, this is probably one of the more densely skewed to our tastes as far as they've been. Because I just looking at the writers quickly, the name is Mariko Tamaki, Tom Taylor, Jeff Lemire, Benjamin Percy.
Well,
just stick out immediately.
And not just Ben Percy, but Ben Percy and Otto Schmidt.
Of course, yes.
And then Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino.
It does look like rebirth Green Arrow when we get to that, the story with Schmidt and Percy.
Yeah, and then we get, Mike Grell, of course, doing a story.
Some classic stuff, yeah.
Right, but then you also have Ram V doing a story, and Devin Grayson. So, but yeah, no, this might be. I feel this was one of the stronger ones, which weirdly, this and Green Lantern both came out real strong. I think because it didn't feel like just a thrown together anthology, like some of the other ones, like the Catwoman or Joker one. I just felt like they threw those together. This, I almost feel like these creators had a story in mind for Green Arrow.
I don't know if I feel as strongly.
Yeah?
I mean, I don't
I
know.
don't know.
I enjoyed enough of it, but I don't know if I feel as I don't know. It's more special in some of the other ones that we've done
Yeah.
or covered.
Well, I'm also very, Green Arrow is one of my favorite characters. I do enjoy Ollie quite a bit, so I'm a bit biased.
Yeah, I mean, the first story then is Tamaki, and
Hmm.
Javier Rodriguez on the art, and this is a very classic. I mean, I've never read like a Golden Age era
Hmm.
Green Arrow story, but I'm assuming this is what it's harkening back to.
Yeah.
And I will say this: I never knew about the arrow signal. Okay, this is a new thing to me.
So, yeah, so this is what I love is how much it is kind of making fun of how close Green Arrow and Batman were, especially in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
Like, down to the fact that Green Arrow had an arrow cave and an arrow car. So I like that here. Also, I'm revisiting, well, not revisiting, I'm visiting for the first time because I realized I never read Stars and Stripe. So, coming across the Seven Soldier stuff like we did in the Stargirl Spring Break, this very much felt like that. So I appreciate Tamaki really hitting that kind of golden agey vibe here.
Yeah. Oh, the Batman comparison actually is more in the Taylor story, which comes up a bit later.
Yeah, but here, I mean, it is. This is almost a Batman and Robin story with arrows, which I think is what makes it to me funny.
Oh, sure,
'Cause
but in terms of
yeah,
the writing is actually pointing it out
right,
and making a joke
right.
about it. That's in the Taylor story. Here, yeah, it does feel like an old school Batman and Robin. I'm not going to argue
Hmm.
with that. It does, it absolutely does. There's a bank robber, a bandit who keeps disappearing.
Yeah,
Somehow has found a way to turn himself invisible. I would go too far to say that Roy feels like very Jason Todd in some of these moments where he gets really
yeah.
upset and angry because the bandit keeps
Hmm.
getting away. So they go out. The fact, I mean, one of the comparisons between Batman and Robin in terms of old school stuff is that the narration refers to Roy as Oliver's ward, and I'm like,
Yeah.
come on now, come on.
Well, and that's what I mean. That's why it's so funny that you had these characters operating at the same time. This is, probably mid 40s. This is harkening back to, and that's prime Batman and Robin era. I mean, just think about what the book stands looked like at that time, where Batman and Robin, and then Green Arrow and Speedy. And one's definitely ripping off the other. I'm sure. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, calling him his ward
I'm
and
going to go out on a limb here and say that Green Arrow was ripping off Batman.
yeah,
Just a long shot, but
yeah.
I've
I
got
see
a
what
good
you're
feeling.
doing,
Um, I think
go
what we
ahead.
have to talk about next, because there's a page where Oliver's showing him all of his trick arrows, and
Mhm.
is it just me, or do one or two of these look like weird sex toys?
Yeah, it's a bit.
Like the mass hysteria arrow. That looks like some sort of massager, shall we say?
Yes, and the black light arrow, not the electric arrow. You know,
Oh yeah,
scary.
I wouldn't shove that up anywhere.
No,
Uh, I mean
yeah,
the smoke arrow looks like it's maybe
a
tickles.
tickler.
Yeah, got a bit
Yeah,
of a tickler vibe. I'm just
yeah.
saying, there's a surprising amount of these that look like they could be used sexually.
I mean, it's also the phallic nature of an arrow.
The phallic
I think
nature of
that
an
plays in.
arrow.
Yeah,
An arrow, something that's usually shaped like this, like with sharp edges.
but it's also a rod that. Yeah, I'm just saying. Um, the one that Roy's looking his eye down also does not help.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so we get to see kind of the almost the him going out of his way to use these trick arrows to catch the vanishing bandit, uh, and come to behind that they end up watching a bunch of what were they? Body paint oil, acrylic arrows.
The acrylic arrow,
Uh,
yes. Well, no, because they launch all
yeah.
the other ones, and then Oliver
Yes.
just launches this one arrow, which covers them in
Yeah.
paint, and then it's like,
Mhm.
oh, there we got him. Okay, off we go.
And I also love that Roy launches the handcuff arrows as if that is something that is aerodynamic.
There's kind of a joke ending here because I was wondering, like, because obviously these are all short stories, and I was like, wait, he's getting out of prison. Where's this going? It has to be ending soon, and it's got a bit of a joke ending where the bandit wants to sell to some mob bosses one of Oliver's arrows that he's grabbed, but Oliver then says that he took some influence from the bandit and presumably has installed the invisibility tech on them. So when these mob bosses who like paid his bail and got him out of jail look at the box and there's no arrow in it, they go to beat him up, and that's kind of the joke ending. I mean, it's a little bit silly because, like, surely if they just turned the box upside down, they'd hear it clunk in the table because it'd still be there.
Yeah, but they're mob bosses that are looking for instant gratification. So
yeah, I suppose. It's a fun time though. It's a silly story.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I like the art style in it. It definitely harkens back to that. All the clean lines.
Yeah, it's very clean.
It feels of an era. So I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah,
It was an enjoyable story.
A lot of flat colors, a lot of a blockiness and stuff like that. Like it's obviously it's still very modern compared to what we'd actually get back then, but it's that way where it kind of emulates it, but still feels quite pleasing to a modern eye.
Yeah.
So that is the Mariko Tamaki story. The second story is the Tom Taylor story, which I am accidentally just scrolling through because I have a thumb down too long. So it's called Punching Evil. It's Tom Taylor, Nicholas Scott. So what a pair that is.
Yeah.
Right away.
I'm just gonna get my one criticism out of the way is that the coloring here, it does not work for Scott art for me. I like when Scott's art is a little brighter, and this just it added almost like this dinginess to it. That I don't know if I particularly liked, but the rest of the art is, fantastic. Like no other complaints.
Yeah, I never really had a problem. I think it was going for kind of a vibe of like the 40s or 50s to give it an old school sense. I think that's what the coloring was there for. It's one of those things though, where after a page or two, once you get, because the panel on the second page of Dinah walking in and all, like, she looks amazing, and so by the time I got there, I was so used to the coloring at that point that it didn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
But this is about Dinah wants Oliver to train to be a better fighter, so he's training with Wildcat. Although notably, he does not know it's Wildcat. He just thinks it's a boxer named Ted. Yes, he's just a guy named Ted, and he gets his ass whipped in the boxing ring, and he gets beat up over and over again. But he's determined to keep coming back, and he's like, "No, why can't I just use arrows? I can shoot them from far away." And Ted breaks a bunch of his arrows. Says, "No, now you can't shoot these. You're going to have to learn to fight up close. Here you go, because you can't punch someone from a distance." And of course, this entire story from Tom Taylor is all about building up to maybe where the creation of the boxing glove arrow comes from.
Yeah,
because that's how we end the story. We have Yellow Wasp who comes in and attacks them. Actually hits Wildcat in the head with a laser blast. So Oliver grabs the boxing glove and fires an arrow to win the fight. Gets an uppercut effectively, and that's kind of her joke ending. But of course, I did enjoy because Oliver at the start of this, probably my favorite joke of the whole thing, is right at the start where Oliver says, "Oh, come on, I'm already a vigilante. What could I really learn from you?" And then Batman walks out the locker room saying, "All right, thanks, Ted. I'll see you next week." The idea that Batman is learning things from Ted, and Batman is obviously a better fighter than Green Arrow is.
Yeah, and I do love that though, because I do love that Ted Grant is the, like Batman's taken all kinds of martial arts, but you got to learn brawling from Ted Grant, and I do like that. And I love that Ollie is the complete opposite of Batman in that way, where he thinks he's got everything figured out, whereas Bruce is always looking for something new. And he thinks this is all a waste of time.
Yeah. But of course, Bruce on his way out does say, "Oh, I'm sorry. Where's your arrow car or your arrow cave?" Or he throws some shade at him, and Oliver feels the cold stare of the bat.
We are spoiled with Tom Taylor right now doing a Superman book and Nightwing. I would love for him to do an Ollie and Dinah, Black Canary and Green Arrow. He just gets these characters.
When he's done with one of the other runs, sure. We're reaching critical mass here on how many runs you can have going at one time. So that was the Taylor story. The next story
really good.
is Who Watches the Watchtower, and it's Stephanie Phillips writing with Chris Mooneyham on the art. And what's so funny, the last story being a Wildcat story, is that this story reminded me a lot of an early issue of JSA where Wildcat is left on his own at the JSA headquarters and has to like fight off some villains on his all by himself, and he's injured as well in that particular issue. So Green Arrow is pissed. He's pissed that he's been left behind, whilst the rest of the team are going off
monitor duty.
Yeah, they're all going off to fight some sort of space battle. And he's like, oh shit, I get to stay here on my own. Well, I hope I'm just going to watch TV. But of course, some aliens show up, and we get. Honestly, I thought the art here was pretty good. Like the action of him jumping around, firing the arrows. There's nice coloring as well. I think the green really pops against the explosions and the blue backgrounds and stuff like that. And he wins this fight. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. But he does get to use like a sort of like he picks up an arrow or a bow that's like an alien bow, and he's like, "Oh, I can't remember if this is the bow that does this from this planet or the bow that does this from this dimension, but we'll find out." Yeah. So it creates like an energy arrow that he bows at the bad guy.
If anyone's been watching Bad Batch, it's very similar to Omega's energy bow, which I thought was pretty funny, because this was written I don't know how long ago, before it was put in production. So just the idea of this coming out around that same time is pretty funny to me.
Don't bring up Star Wars, man. It's not like...
Yes, I'm gonna bring up Star Wars because it's actually relevant for once. And I'm not doing it just to annoy you. But I did like Ollie's whole thing of, hey, we're about to find out what this one does. And he says even, cool. But yeah, Stephanie Phillips. I love her voice for Ollie here, and then the rivalry with Hawkman. Because that's one of my favorite things, that Hawkman and Green Arrow do not like each other. So to see them, hitting back at each other here, and then at the end, Hawkman sees one of his helmets that was on display is, got damaged, and says it was an antique, and Ollie's like, oh no, that was old.
Honestly, because the whole thing at the end is he's pretending that nothing was happening, and he's just kind of being smug about everything. But my favorite part of that whole page is the panel right at the top where he's putting he's put like duct tape over all the damaged glass and all the cases and stuff. He's like trying to hide it. Nothing happened. It's fine. I had it under control.
Yeah.
So
pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it's a funny story. I mean, it's funny because obviously those first two stories had like knockout creative teams, and I got to this third one expecting it to be a dip, and I ended up maybe even liking it more in some ways than some of the first couple. So. It's on top form so far as an anthology goes. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
We got the Make Grill story up next, which I mean, I didn't love this story. I think it obviously makes sense to have a Grill story in here.
Yeah.
And he's got a really good voice for Oliver. But as far as just these stories on their own go, which is him and Shadow taking on some smugglers, some sex traffickers at the docks, there's not really much to it.
No. It does feel like it's from the Longbow Hunters, because this is a different Ollie. This is an Ollie that has zero issue with killing people, especially as we find out, human traffickers. So help me out here. At the beginning, is that Connor Hawks? No, that's Dinah then, right?
I'm pretty sure that's Dinah, because Dinah, up until whenever they changed it, naturally had dark hair, and then it was a blonde wig she put on when she was...
Because I almost had to pull out of that one just because I didn't see the wig until right now.
Yeah, because
on the page.
Because the blonde wig for Dinah was basically the equivalent to Clark Kent's glasses, or vice versa, really. But you know what I mean.
Right.
That's the effect. Because that's why when I learned about Black Canary, that was one of the key details that I first ever learned about her, was that she's not really blonde. That's just like the costume. But at some point they decided to change that because they just wanted her to be blonde, I guess. But
yeah,
that's what it is. Which admittedly, it's not a recent change. I mean, she
no.
I'm pretty sure she was just blonde and like Birds of Prey in the 90s. So it's been a while. But yeah, so there you go. Not much to say really. It's a fight scene. It's make grill art, so it looks like old school Green Arrow from like the late 80s, early 90s, which is nice. But there's not really much to the story. It just kind of whatever. After that, we have the Ram V story, which It's kind of it's got the old, is it a poem or a song, which is the I shot an arrow up into the air, it fell to
It's a
earth.
poem.
I know not where. Which I've heard before. I've heard it brought up before. It was in a Twilight Zone episode actually. That I
I
did.
shot it. Yeah, it's the title, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the early episodes too.
It's a season
isn't
1
it?
episode. Yeah, season 1.
Yeah.
With one of the more predictable endings.
Yeah, but not for 1960. You know, that blew people's minds.
I'm sure it did, but it's a very predictable ending if you're watching it with a modern eye. So
episode 15.
This is this is kind of just like going through Oliver's life as more of this poem is told every couple of pages, and it's kind of showing different parts. And the whole kind of thing is the idea that, you know, life isn't just one continuous straight line. Much like an arrow, you know, there's a lot of like things that affect the direction it's firing, momentum, gravity, so on, so on. And the idea that his relationship with Dinah, his relationship with children, his relationship with whoever, has, you know, altered where he's went. And it's kind of just like a tone story. There's not really a story to it. It's more, this poem plays out as we get sort of like little slices of life kind of sprinkled throughout as it's going. And the art here is by Christopher Mitten. So I have to admit, I thought this was just okay. I wasn't in love with this.
So I like it for him being able to balance the poem with Ollie's life. Him being Ram V able to put the Longfellow poem and how that works with Ollie on who his character is. Because, you know, I hadn't looked at this poem since high school probably. But just the whole idea that, you know, they shot an arrow into the air, didn't know where it went. And then, with, you know, I breathed the song into the air, it fell to earth, I knew not where. And then, so basically, you know, you end up coming across these things that you put out into the world. And right, so he was just this guy at the beginning who was just launching arrows indiscriminately, right, off of the yacht. He gets, you know, shipwrecked, has to become this hero. And then as he goes, you know, he comes across Dinah, and, you know, ends up falling in love. And, you know, through here, it shows that by the end, who he is someone that actually has a purpose, right? And he's looking at these kids as they overlook Star City or Seattle. And I liked how that, you know, how Ram V played with that poem.
I mean, obviously, I've been loving what Ram V's been doing, and you know, and pretty much everything I've been reading from him.
Yeah.
I think this just kind of falls slightly, as eloquently as it's done, it falls a little bit into that trap that a lot of these anthologies do, where some stories feel more like they're just recapping like the history of the character, as opposed to just telling a story. And I you know, I think that just made it feel a little bit more okay to me than great or whatever.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, it's not. I don't feel strongly about it.
No, I liked it. And then this artist, you know, we end up seeing an Infinite Frontier in those special. I think he does 2 of the issues.
Okay.
So, yeah, seems like they're getting some good work.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was fine.
There's a couple pages called "Lessons in Friendship with Oliver Queen." I did not read this. I have to admit, I
skipped it too. Yeah.
So, on to the next one, which is basically that we don't actually get much of the story here, but you can kind of get from the implications that effectively we have a Connor Hawke and a Die Hard scenario where he's in a building with terrorists, and there's like the one cop on the outside who's arguing that there's a Green Arrow inside, and he's there to save everyone, and everyone's like, "But isn't Green Arrow dead? What's, you know, like what's going on?"
Yeah, this is definitely in the Ollie died and now Connor Hawke has taken over. While is this the one where he's talking about his not knowing his dad, but still trying to live up to, you know, trying to live up to the memory? Is that the story?
I presume it wasn't any more Connor Hawke stories, was it?
No. Yeah, that's at the beginning where he says, "My name's Connor Hawke and my father was Oliver Queen." Desperate to connect. Yeah. I didn't know if that was bleeding over with the Robin stuff from last week.
I think for me, this is one that's kind of like, this has got less of a story, although it's got a Die Hard setup, but it's more about the style of the fighting, because it's kind of there to showcase the art, and it's called One because the idea is that it's counting down the number of henchmen that he's taken out. So you kind of get these different numbers that get mentioned, and then you have him like talking over the walkie-talkie to him or whatever. and saying, "Are there any left? How many hostiles left?" And he says, "Yeah." And there's like just one guy in front of him, and he says one, and that's like the. I mean, it doesn't even say it. We just get the title one, so it kind of ends the story with the title, which is kind of neat. And they're also right. It's not. Sometimes the muscles on the bad guys are a little bit over the top, but
yeah, it definitely feels like comics of that era of like the late '90s, which I think that's a pretty good job.
Sure, yeah.
Making you feel like it's of that era.
What I will say about it though is that it always seems to have a nice bit of energy and motion. Like I don't necessarily always think that the faces are great or whatever, but I always feel a sense of movement. So I think that counts for something. So that's kind of neat. That's all right. Yeah, it's an all right story.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Who was the art on that? That was Jorge Corona with Brandon Thomas writing on that one. So that's cool. So this next one actually kind of falls into the trap that I was mentioning earlier about just kind of recapping a character's history. However, I think this one's done so well that I'm giving it a pass.
Yeah, and so there's some that are exceptions to that rule because of what Devin Grayson does here with basically not just the Legend of Green Arrow, but for Speedy and Roy, and especially as we're getting to Roy in Infinite Frontier.
It feels more relevant, but I mean, I would say it's more about Roy than it is about Green Arrow. I mean,
no, it is, but I mean, what I mean is about the Legend of Green Arrow and how almost that Roy's been in a struggle to define himself his whole career, right? And that what that means with following in the steps of Green Arrow, as we're having Leon also in the story, a young version of her. So this one's called Green Man and Autumn Sun by Devin Grayson, art and colors by Matt.
And obviously, this is not in current continuity.
No,
and in a strict sense. So this is Oliver's babysitting. While Roy is out doing, arrowy things, being a vigilante. And basically, over the phone, his daughter wants to hear the story of the Green Man and Autumn Sun. And it's basically just Roy's story. It's where he came from, about the Nahavo people that he grew up with, and then being kind of taken in by Oliver. And the kid's got this excitement because she keeps kind of like jumping in to finish sentences or finish like or say the next part or whatever. And he talks about not fitting in, and he talks about Oliver leaving with Hal and how he fell in hard times and he felt lonely and he turned to drugs, and there's all this honest. And Oliver's like, "You told her that? You told her that?"
It's he has trust. If she knows I'm not a perfect person, then it's gonna make it a lot easier to parent. And
I understand. I understand. I'm saying, but Oliver has a natural reaction because she is pretty young. It's a pretty weird thing to tell someone who's that young.
Right, but in the context of, in the context of how Roy grew up, right? So there's that trust there that wasn't there with Ollie and Roy almost. Where she says, I realized early on that I'll never be as smart as her, so the least I can do is be honest. So just that there's this open relationship between those two. And then as she's recounting the story to him and whatnot over the phone, she's drawing, and it ends up being a picture of Ollie and her and Roy and as a family, and it's really heartwarming.
But yeah, to not skip ahead to that though, we have like when they come back and they find Roy this way, and it shows that the Titans were there for him. It shows you that Dinah was there for him. Oliver obviously was there for him. It's kind of this sweet. Kind of just it really is a summary of like Roy Harper's like typical backstory of all the various things that the character that are important to him, that are perhaps going to be relevant forever, his history with drugs, all that kind of stuff. And he gets home and they hug, and it's kind of a sweet ending. But there's this little statement at the end, which I thought was kind of a really nice sentiment for them to throw in here, which is to say that this story is somewhat inspired because the Nahavo people have this thing where they really see the importance of telling stories like this and sort of recounting their past, and that this is kind of an attempt to kind of have that part of Roy's history be included in the story. And they even say, we encourage you to seek out voices of Nahavo people and understand how they tell stories. And there's a really nice sentiment. It was like,
Yeah.
we need a variety of voices. We need authentic voices. We have to challenge our understanding of how stories are and how important they are. I mean, it was hard to like find fault in this. It was really well told. It was really sweet,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of grounded raw in like what he means to the people around him. But then you add on this like extra real world context at the end of like, hey, this is us trying to like celebrate a part of his past that has maybe been just used as a plot point before.
Yeah.
But here we're going to use it to actually enhance how he thinks and sort of relate that to where he came from. So I thought that was neat. So yeah. I wasn't expecting to come out of this thinking maybe. I don't know. We'll see what I think of the rest. But at this point, this might have been my favorite one thus far. And I don't think I was going into this going, "Oh, that Devin Grayson one, that's going to be better than the Tom Taylor and the Mariko Tamaki stories."
Yeah, once I saw the whole thing about reaching out to find authentic Navajo stories from storytellers, and I was like, man, that is because you forget about Roy's backstory. They always just kind of skim over that. So the fact that she's putting the spotlight
it comes
on
up,
it,
yeah, here or there. I remember during the Rebirth run, there was like a brief, like 2-parter or whatever, where it was about Roy's going back to his people, kind of thing. But like, yeah, it doesn't come up that often, so it was kind of a nice way to...
So so I like that, and the sentiment's really nice there. So, but yeah, this one was really good. That's why I so far we're about halfway through, and I'm just like, this is a really solid anniversary issue or anthology, whatever we're calling these.
Yeah. Next up, we got Star City Star. This is Phil Hester with
Phil Hester.
I assume the artist also Phil Hester because it just says inks by Andy Park, so I assume Phil Hester's doing the art too. Yeah. So this is a weird story, actually, where Oliver's looking for a girl named Star, and he's fighting on a onomatopoeia, and there's a really good joke here actually at the start where I love like him shouting out like the sound effect of what he's about to do with the axe. I thought was actually really funny.
Schlunk. And just the fun words that you get to use.
Yeah. Or even Oliver saying, what sounds it's going to make when I hit you with this boxing glove arrow. And then it makes a point of having the sound effect like in big bold text, just so it's like this like the payoff to the joke. But it gets a bit weird because Count Vertigo shows up, and then Hal Jordan shows up and starts fighting him, and it's like, what the hell's going on here?
Yep.
And it's teased early in the story that this girl Star is special, that she has this ability to basically get in people's heads and convince them to do things. So it becomes clear by the end of the story that she's actually making Oliver like see these people and fight these people. They're not really there. They're not actually happening. And it's all about her being too scared to trust people. And it's when she brings up Mia. When he's like, wait, if you dug into my head and you got that far, then you should know me better by now. I should have an understanding that I won't hurt you. And it's just kind of the ending's kind of sweet. Yeah. It was a bit of a weird journey to get there, though. It felt like we had to have a story that got a lot of these villains in it, so we came up with a premise to sort of justify seeing them all.
And it's also very much of the Kevin Smith era, the Return of Ollie, because Hester is the one that did the art there. I tried to get into that. I got about 2 or 3 issues in, and it's very hard to read. Now I'm a Kevin Smith fan, but it's very, very wordy. So thankfully, this was a lot less wordy. But I almost feel like if Kevin Smith he could have helped out on the story. I think that's kind of what they were going for. But ultimately, I like the sentiment, but it was a kind of weird read because I was feeling lost, and I think that's the point. But that's not a fun spot to be in as you're going through the story. Because all of a sudden Hal Jordan's there, and Hal's beating him up and whatnot. So.
It's like there's no real sign that anything is weird about the fight until Hal's just randomly there also fighting him. Yeah. And it's like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah, because I could buy Onomatopoeia and Count Vertigo trying to get their hands on this girl, right?
Yeah.
That's very much... But then for Hal just to show up and then start with him...
Which is fine if you've already set up the idea that this is in his head, then we know anything's fair game. Like anyone can show up
Right.
and can be acting out of character and whatever. But because it presents it as fairly straightforward up until that point, it's just kind of like, wait, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I missed the page. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Am I missing panels here? What's going on? But this I mean, the art's solid, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Phil Esther, that's primarily an artist, so
Yeah.
And it feels like that late '90s, those clean, solid lines.
It's
feels
got
very representative of an era.
Yeah, it's got a lot of those deep blacks where it'll just the shadows will be really harsh and full rather than shaded or anything like that. They'll just be sort of big blocky blacks, which gives it a nice look. It's just not a bad look by any means.
Mhm. No.
So cool. So the next story is one that goes back to focus on Oliver and Dinah, where they're having their anniversary, and he's got something planned for her. She thinks that him being kidnapped by Deathstroke is a surprise fake kidnapping. Turns out it's a real kidnapping. He bought her tickets to a thing. So she shows up, and so the whole point of this is the idea that they don't necessarily always have to be honest with each other, but they just have to understand each other. And that's the sentiment that this story sort of gets across. So we get Dinah, doing her big stream, double page spread. Oliver suiting up and then being like, honestly, my favorite part of this might have been Slade going, I just took a job to keep you distracted while something else was going on. Although I'm starting to regret hearing this bickering that I didn't up the job for free.
Yeah. So, and I know it's kind of because of Arrow,
Yes.
to show that we get Deathstroke kind of against these two, but it feel like it's a natural fit. That of course Slade and Ollie would be on opposite sides of things, and just it felt.
I think Slade's inclusion in this anthology is probably because of the show, and that made a lot of people associate Deathstroke with Green Arrow. However, I mean, Deathstroke gets paid to show up in so many different books. It doesn't feel like a play. It doesn't feel forced.
No, that's what I mean. But it's such a natural fit that
Matt,
I actually am like.
There's that grunt Mills here.
So, as I was saying, Deathstroke feels like such a natural fit as an antagonist to Ollie that I like seeing this pairing even without the show. Like it's something that just makes sense for me.
It's because he doesn't have superpowers. Like it can be more of a fight because he's a really great human villain, but he's not like flying around or shooting fire out of his eyes or whatever. So yeah, that was Vita Ayala on that story with Laura Braga on the art.
It's the first time I've really thoroughly enjoyed a Vita Ayala story. Because they've been pretty okay.
That is not true, Matt. That is not true.
Why?
The Dead Man mini from like way early in Rebirth. That was great.
That was Vita Ayala?
I'm pretty sure that was Vita Ayala.
Oh shoot. Well, let's narrow it back down to anthologies.
Okay, sure.
A lot of the Futures End stuff I read with their name on it. I was kind of like, yes, this is okay. It's not my type of thing. This though, I think that they had the voices down for all the characters, and I think they work really well with Laura Braga on the art. And it just like I felt like the action sequences here were pretty nice. Like the layouts when Dinah uses the scream, and each concentric green's a different part of the fight. I like that a lot.
I'll say I enjoyed it well enough. I didn't think there was anything special about it. That one in particular, but it did look fine, and the characterization, like you say, was fairly on point. There's a couple of funny lines or moments that I got a kick out of. And I think like the Ben Percy and the Otto Schmidt, which it straight up looks like the Rebirth run, and we even have the supporting cast popping up.
It felt like a warm hug.
It was hard not to feel nostalgic for this now. It's kind of weird that we've been doing this show long enough that the run that was started when we started this show is now something we feel nostalgic for whilst talking about it on the show. But hey, that shows that we've got the experience and the credibility now.
Yes,
we're a tenured podcast. So yeah, Malcolm Merlin snooping around, and the whole sentiment for this story. Because typically these anthologies, each story will have a single sentiment about the character, and the sentiment here is that Oliver Queen can't be a loner, right? He used to think he was, but he's got a team. He's got Dinah, of course. He's got Emiko, he's got Diggle, he's got Henry, and because he's off hunting on his own, he might have gotten taken out. He might have struggled to fight Merlin, but of course the others all show up and help fight. The action looks fantastic.
Yeah.
I miss reading the Schmidt, Percy book. Just I mean, the art was so good.
Yeah. I mean, the stories would fluctuate from time to time. I mean, I like Percy's run a whole lot, but this again felt like a nice warm hug from a friend that you haven't seen in a while, and this is a version of Ollie and Green Arrow that I really enjoy. So to see Emmy there and then Dig, and they're in that treehouse like kind of base that they had, the Sherwood Forest vibes.
Yeah, because that was later on in the run as well. So this feels like it's very connected to the end of his run.
Right. The only way it gets more Ben Percy is if he had the Ollie werewolf from right before. Was that right before Rebirth?
Well, I never read it, so yeah, it was before Rebirth.
Yeah, it must have been. But yeah, I just thought, seeing Emmy again working with Ollie, whole lot of fun. We all know I have a soft spot for that character. So, but then to get a Percy and Schmidt story back to back with the Lemire and Sorrentino, we're just spoiled at this point.
Yeah. Well, this is the funny thing. I don't have the same adoration of the Lemire Sorrentino run that you and Connor do. Obviously, the art's fantastic, and the art is fantastic in this short story. But I don't know, for a variety of reasons, I just wasn't as into it. I didn't necessarily care that much about the mythology it was adding, even though I typically love Jeff Lemire. But I think I tend to prefer Jeff Lemire's creator-owned stuff than I do his superhero stuff, right?
Yeah. That's fair.
So, so the ending of this one's a bit weird for me. I if this is harkening back to things in that run, I don't know what it is. So,
well, it's basically him closing the loop of where his story began and where it ended and where he, So I would say metaphorically here, him going to the island and basically handing over this arrow to his past self.
Yeah, I don't think
closing the loop.
I don't think I ever finished the run. I obviously got the idea of him handing the arrow to younger self. Yeah. The idea of the that element of it, right? Because obviously he goes to the island. He's an old man. He tells he's the guy in the boat to go, and he's like, "You sure, Mr. Queen?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm sure. Don't come back." And he just goes into the forest. And he sits down. He's got the arrow, and then he sort of combusts into flames at the end of his journey.
Like a phoenix, like a phoenix, rise again.
Yeah. This idea that the island was a place where he was reborn originally. I get the metaphor, but I was wondering because I never finished that run in the first place. I wasn't sure if this was something specific that was set up or harkening back to or no. Okay.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's been a while since I read it, but I do love that whole arc. The whole Lemire is one of my favorite runs, but it's been a while since I read it. However, I think it's more metaphorical here. Is like you said, like a phoenix, he's going to be reborn, and this is a cycle that's going to perpetuate, the here. But I mean, him handing over that arrow, which was so integral to that story, I could see how you would think, like you felt like you were missing something. But I like, and again, the Sorrentino art just is fantastic. So seeing the high contrast panels, like where he does the whole background color. Like, sometimes it'd be red, sometimes it's green.
That stuff looks great. Yeah, there's no denying that. I should probably go back and just reread that run at some point.
I would.
And finish it this time.
Hey, patrons, make him read that when he's done with Animal Man.
There's a connection there, because Lemire also wrote some Animal Man.
He did.
So, a couple other pages, and then the final story of the book, which I didn't really, I mean... Obviously, I kind of looked down and saw the name Larry O'Neill, right, the writer, but I never really clicked or I really paid attention to it. So I got to this final story, and it's completely voiceless, other than like one phrase at the very, very end. And it's basically Denny O'Neill's story told in silent comic book form. It's the whole idea of him imagining storytelling. So you see him as a little boy at the start, and he's got like a sort of like cowboy hat shaped bubble above his head with like a...
Yeah,
he's listening
because he's listening to the radio.
Yeah, he's listening to the old wireless. Yeah, but he's hearing a cowboy story, so he's thinking about cowboys, and then we see him thinking about Superman in a Superman sort of shaped bubble when he's looking at a comic, and then he's like he's off in the Navy and he's thinking about a gun and like a gangster story or something. And then it keeps going. And the idea is called Tap 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 because he becomes a writer and he's tapping away on a keyboard. And there's even kind of a Captain America. I mean, obviously there's not enough detail to get them sued.
No,
but
I mean, if that's how he broke in, right? I mean, this is basically a biography by his son.
In many ways, yeah, and it showed him in different time periods. Showed you him with his first baby, him proposing, him writing various different characters, going to see movies. I particularly liked when he's an older man with his wife, and I mean, there's a sad part that his wife, I assume, died first because she disappears like halfway through this page. But the idea that they watched like some of the early Batman movies together, and then he's on his own and he's watching all the other movies that have existed now in TV shows. Because that's what that felt like to me. Was all these different symbols around the TV. And then he's getting kind of old, and he's clearly getting weaker as he's tapping on his story, and we see him in the bed, and then the final page is the once again the very first thing we saw him dreaming of, which was the cowboy story, fades from the cowboy hat bubble, and we just see the green hand on his hand, and it just says "Good night, pops," and then the final panel is all of these characters that he worked on at some point standing around his hospital bed, and it says Dennis O'Neil, 1939 to 2020. This was a wonderful little tribute, and it was one of those things where I realized like halfway through what it was. I'm like, wait a minute, this is really specific. This is about a writer, and then I looked at the name and went, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of Green Arrow, it's that Hard Traveling Heroes.
Oh yeah,
that Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams did. So to throw this in here on a Green Arrow, it's a natural fit. And to have Green Arrow be the one that's holding his hand at the end.
Yeah, and then of course, because one of the things you see him writing at one point is The Question, which also was one of his big runs.
Well, and then you have Bruce and Talia there with the heartbreak on one of the panels there. Because he created Ra's al Ghul and Talia and that. So, just that last panel that hits hard.
Which makes me wonder, actually, if when he's walking out the movies with his son, if Savage Clones of Kung Fu is a real movie, because I need to know what it is now.
Let's see.
Savage Clones of Kung Fu, because that sounds like a winner to me.
Let's see. Google, do not fail me now. No, I mean there's Savage Fists of Kung Fu, but that's a comic book.
I wonder if they just had to make up something for copyright reasons. I don't know.
I mean, he's taking his son to the movies, and they leave and they're talking about what they had watched and stuff. So yeah, just whatever the most outrageous Hong Kong cinema you could find, But yeah, looking. I mean, there's one called The Savage Five from '74. But nothing that comes up. But no, yeah, this story hit hard. I saw Connor talk about it, about how absolutely gutted it made him, and I was like, oh no, because there's two ways to read that, right? That it kind of fell on its face, but no, it's definitely very effective. And I mean, Fornes, come on, and he's definitely doing this because of the Rorschach book, right? You would think that's the.
It feels like the obvious connection to me.
Yeah.
It was hard not to be kind of moved by it. It was kind of it was a hell of a tribute, and Green Arrow is one of the characters you associate with Denny O'Neil more than many. So it's hard to fault it. It's really hard to fault it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, the standard's fairly high. There's maybe 2 or 3 that I'm not super hot on.
Yeah.
In the book. Which is probably better than average for sure with these anthologies. But yeah, not that I had a bad time reading it by any means, because I think I mean, don't get me wrong, if this was on a week with we had like 6 or 7 or 8 other books and I had to read this at the end, I might have been a bit more in a mood having to like plow through it. This been on a 5th week where there was just a couple other things to read. As big as this was, and as big as the Infinite Frontier Secret Files was, it wasn't. It was a pleasant afternoon time of some Green Arrow, it does help that there's not been any Green Arrow in a while, on his own.
That too. I mean, the most I can think of lately was in Deceased, right? And then right now in Justice League with
Yeah.
Bendis. So yeah, it feels nice.
Yeah. So, no, not bad. It's not bad. If you like Green Arrow, you probably get something out of this. What are you going to give the anthology, Matt?
Well, I think I enjoyed this a little bit more than you did. I'm going to give this an 8.5.
I'll just go straight 8. I mean, I think it's good. I think some of the stories go a little bit above me. I think the Nahavo story about Roy, I think, is really good. Obviously, the tribute at the end is quite heartwarming. And then it was kind of surprising to me that I didn't love, say, Ramvi and Tamaki stories a bit more than I did. But so maybe there's a little minor disappointment there, which is why I'm not as super hot on it. But not that they're bad by any means. They're just I come into it and there's certain writers that I expect to be blown away by, but there's some quality stuff in there. So yeah, there you go. Green Arrow 80th anniversary special. Catwoman Annual 2021. So they've rejigged. Is this the first one we've gotten to with this new numbering system?
Maybe, but I like that they do that because it lets me know when it came out, and when I'm storing comics and whatnot.
Yeah, because
it's in nicely.
There's a lot of Batman Annual number ones. You have to check which one you're actually referring to. So using the year makes more sense. It definitely does. I do not dispute such a thing. So this is actually a very important issue for the main book. This is the sort of thing that will absolutely be in the trade with the arc.
This is just the next chapter.
It's the next chapter. It's a little bit longer, and it's effectively just an excuse to and this is the thing, you don't have to have an excuse for this. There would be totally nothing wrong with issue 34 of Catwoman just focusing on the villain's backstory. That's a normal thing to do in a story. It absolutely is. But they've taken the opportunity to make it like a second issue this month and an annual so that the main story can keep sort of moving next time. But there's some important stuff, and not only do we learn more about who this villain is, Father Valet, but we also get to see Catwoman's reaction to Leo and what happened to him, who is not dead. He was left for dead, but he is in the hospital. He is holding on. But so there's, and I think her reaction to that is actually quite important. Is as quick as it is, I think her throwing things on the ground and getting frustrated is an important character beat that is going to be important. So, so we get into the backstory, and they do kind of a swerve on us here, where they show us Jean Paul's father as Azrael working for the Order of Saint Damas, and it's like, okay, is he going to become this character? And then it turns out that someone he trained for the Order ends up being Carl. Yeah, he ends up being Father Valet. He is someone. So basically, because they've been more active and they're becoming more known in the press, the head honchos of the Order of Saint Damas decide to go underground and hide, and part of that is everyone under a certain level is to be purged, so there's no evidence of their existence. So Father Valet, I'm distracted because my mouse is so goddamn loud.
Yeah, well, I think my mouse died, so now I can't move my mouse around because it's wireless. So
that's fine.
That's fun.
That's fine. You don't need to just know anyway. You're good.
No, I know, but because I can't have that.
Okay, so
go ahead, talk.
You keep clicking and making noises. It's distracting.
There it goes. Got it.
Okay. Jesus Christ.
We're good.
Stupid wireless mouse. Oh, I hate them. Right. So, Father Valet, right? He's tasked with killing his proteges, everyone he trained underneath him. So there's kind of this personal stake to all of it, and he seemingly does this. He's killed everyone but this Carl, who's maybe the closest to, who he's kind of taken in as a surrogate son. And his son already exists. The book makes a point of saying that he asked for his son to be let go and live a life somewhere else away from all this, so he could have a normal life, right? But he, Carl jumps off the balcony of their big fancy church and is presumed dead, but he doesn't die. He survives the fall and becomes kind of something closer to Father Valet. And then ultimately, when Valet finds him, Father Valet. No, sorry, that's his, when
No,
Azrael's dad,
Ludwig.
right?
Yeah.
When Azrael's dad finds him, he's like, "No, I figured you were alive. I'm going to give you here's some passports, here's some money. They're always going to be chasing you. There's nothing I can do about that." But when he gives him the passport, he's changed his surname to Valet, so now he's Carl Valet, and of course, eventually Father Valet. Because, and I think it's a good swerve because when you're thinking early on that maybe it is just Azrael's dad, right? You're thinking, oh, maybe he's trying to repent for all these people that he killed that he felt was unjust, and that's kind of part of what he's doing, and or something. So the swerve kind of worked for me in that sense because they were giving me enough reasons to sort of understand why he might have went this way.
So here's my thing. I never thought that Azrael's dad was Father Valley. I thought maybe because of the last name they might be related, but I didn't think Father Valley was well, Jean Paul's.
I never did before this issue. I only thought it in this issue because they showed me his father.
Right. So once I saw Carl, I was like, oh, this is Valley. So what happened to him? Is this his actual other son? Like, is that what they're doing? Is it he sent one son away with this other one? So, I mean, basically it is kind of his son, right? Because you could tell that they're close and he trained him and, but then when it came time to burn him, and I like that that's kind of the motivation for Father Valley, right? Is like this guy ended up doing what he was supposed to, but what did it cost him?
Yeah, it's kind of that dynamic of like his actual son he gave away at a young age, but this other guy who's not his real son, but he actually got to spend time with them and was trained by him, so he's actually had more of the son experience, as it were. So you have this kind of weird dichotomy of the two surrogate brothers who have not even met each other yet. I mean, will that come up? Will Jean Paul appear?
Man, so once we had Father Valley, and I was like, I wonder if he's tied to the Order of Saint Dumas. I like the Order of Saint Dumas. I like them as an organization. They're
He's like a cast off. He's a renegade of the Order of Saint Dumas.
Yeah, and so like, what does this mean for Azrael? Right? Is he gonna have a reckoning? Like, is this just the introduction of Father Valley to the greater DCU, or is this just gonna be in Catwoman? I mean, there's so many questions this brings up.
I would say this just feels like a Catwoman thing, right? This feels like something that Ram V, unless they see what he's doing here and go, hey, don't kill him because we can do other stuff with him later.
Right, and that's, man, I kind of like that. And Azrael's kind of been missing since he went off to space and did that whole, Justice League Odyssey thing.
Oh yeah, that was the thing. I forgot about that.
Yeah, right. And so I just I like culty type stuff in my comics.
Can I just say the head honcho who gives Daddy Azrael this order? Right. I was totally getting Anthony Hopkins vibes from this guy in the art.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
He looks like old man Anthony Hopkins. That's what he looks like.
But this is a really, really solid issue. And then the art too. Did you talk about whose art? Because you have Blanco.
Do you know what? We have three very good artists. I will say there's not that much justification in the art for it to switch, other than the flashback. But as it's telling the story of the flashback, it does suddenly switch halfway through to a second artist, and I did, even though the art's really good, it felt jarring because it was so different.
It did
to the first batch.
All the art by itself is good.
Yeah, because when it switches, it's all the flaming sword stuff, and that looks great. The colors are great. Yeah. Yes.
So Juan Faraya and Kyle Hotz with Blanco doing the end caps, right? That's the modern day stuff.
Which makes sense because that's the stuff that has to feel more like Catwoman, the main book. Yeah.
But yeah, man, just the stuff with the flaming sword and then him stabbing it through Jean Paul's dad, kind of leaving him there and whatnot. Yeah, this is a whole lot of good stuff here.
Yeah, it was just given us this really intricate backstory for a villain, which, Joe, I kind of like. I do kind of like this thing because we've got a greater DC universe. The idea that this villain comes from a different corner that's not really related to Catwoman all that much, and it's not a big deal. Like it's not something that we have to tie into Azrael later. I mean, it'll be cool to maybe see them run into each other at some point, but it doesn't feel like this has been done solely just so they can have that eventually. It feels like no. Ram V looked at the DCU and said, "No, I want to like build someone out of that weird corner and have them become the villain in Catwoman to Catwoman, rather than being connected to the actual literal connections that he has to other characters." I think that's cool. I like that. It feels more random. It feels more like a greater universe to me.
Just building that tapestry of Gotham City, which I really like, right? Because yeah, they're tied to Azrael through Batman and the Catwoman and stuff, but what makes us work is you have Catwoman who is all about crime, right? And stealing and doing all this. And then you have someone that's a twisted priest that thinks that they're, you know, sending people to heaven through killing them and whatnot, like as part of his big mission. So just to see those two ends of the spectrum at odds, just it works.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's Ram V is doing work on Catwoman that is more people need to be reading. I can't yell this enough.
Yeah, so it's wonderful stuff. Ultimately, we're still building this stuff. Hadley's at the police station talking about the rising tension, the protests about what the mayor's about to do in Alleytown with all the police. And this tension's building, and Father Valet is walking past, and the story ends. The church that he's came out of, because it starts with him in this church, and he's sort of exercising, or eventually he's like basically torturing himself at one point. But at the end of the story, and this is right next to all these protests, he blows up this church. So the final page of the book is this explosion. So, which I can't imagine is going to make peace and quiet in Alleytown.
Not at all.
So this is essential stuff. Like I don't imagine how you could start the next issue of Catwoman having not read this.
No. But I do like that it was oversized. I mean, it's 40 pages, so you get all that backstory. But yeah, definitely, if you're reading Catwoman, you need to be reading this.
I mean, I've disagreed with this, especially with Cara. I don't know with you, but like I prefer when the angle is just the next chapter of the story. It's much because it feels. Sometimes when it's a separate story, it can be a great standalone thing, but often it'll sometimes just feel like a weird filler thing to justify having an annual.
Right.
I kind of love when it's like treated as a special chapter in the ongoing story that adds to it, because it makes it feel like it's more exciting to read.
Well, especially when the writer is handling it, because sometimes you'd get annuals that are just their own thing, but it's the same writer, and they're just doing some side kind of story that doesn't ultimately pay off. I know the Batman Superman annuals used to do that a lot. With Loeb writing them, but they wouldn't play into what was going on. So, I'm for this
because I think because you have that thing where the fifth week can feel like filler week, and you don't really want that. That makes it feel, I don't know, just like a throwaway week in many ways. And so issues like this make it feel like no, we had like a proper meaty chapter of one of our stories that enhanced it. Watch Connor not read this, and think he doesn't have to.
I hope he does read it, though.
What's this? What's going on?
Yeah. He'll come in for Catwoman 33 or 34, whatever the next issue is.
Yes.
And go, since when did Jean-Paul have a brother?
Well, I mean, that kind of happened in a weird way with Catwoman before, actually, because he didn't know about shoes. I had to explain to him who shoes was, because he missed that week.
That's true, because that was the one special.
It was in the anthology thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. What are you giving a Catwoman Annual 2021?
I am giving this an 8.5.
I will concur with the 8.5. I'd probably go a little higher if the art was more consistent. Not so much the difference between the present day and the flashback stuff. I get why that's different and that can work as being different, but there is a sudden shift halfway through the backstory where it just, and there is a little bit of a time jump to come in, maybe, but it doesn't really feel like it should change. It just feels so jarringly different that I'm just like, yeah, okay. So yeah, 8.5 though, 8.5. So it is a solid issue, which is essential, I think, as far as we can tell. But I can't imagine how it won't feel essential. We read more of the main book. So that's Catwoman Annual 2021, which takes us on to our third and final book, which is Infinite Frontiers Secret Files Issue 1. This was released digitally. The final part of the digital version came out this week as well, which was number 6. This is 6 12-ish page stories. And it's got a bit of a framing device as a concept to this, which is that Bones is listening to tapes that Chase has compiled on various notable characters in Infinite Frontier, and he's listening to these tapes, and that's kind of the as he's hearing the tapes, we're seeing something of some of these characters. So we get one about Roy, we get one about President Superman from Earth 23, we get Jade and Obsidian, which was one of the more, I thought, interesting ones out of the batch.
Yeah.
So we'll work through these and we'll see what they all think. What's so funny to me is that I kind of read the first couple and went, I don't know how important these feel. They feel just more like refreshers on who these characters are. But by the time we got to the end, I was like, oh no, those last couple were actually felt like they might have been teasing some things that are...
Yeah, 4 and 5, especially the Bones one with Boomerang and then Psycho Pirate, definitely felt more... These are, no, I wouldn't say integral, but if you read these, you'll have a better...
It's a nice tease, because obviously we saw Psycho Pirate in issue 1 of Infinite Frontier.
Right.
And where the Psycho Pirate story at the end of this leaves off, it feels like, oh, that's a nice little sort of like, oh, that led into that.
But
so
up to this point, so in order, you have the Calvin Ellis, Superman of Earth 23, then you have Roy Harper, then you have Jade and Obsidian, the Totality, Bones and Boomerang, and Psycho Pirate.
Yeah.
I would almost argue the first 4 are a little bit just superfluous. Like, they're fine stories. I'm not upset that I read them.
Yeah, I would say I agree with that to an extent, although I think the one that stands out is the Jade and Obsidian one. I think partly because obviously they've not been around for a long time, but I think the main thing is because Jade's effectively working through this trauma of like being back, and she's scared that the star heart might like not work one day.
Right, but then it also, and we'll get there, kind of diverges into something with the character that shows up, and it's a little bit weird. Just like
it's a little bit weird, but I think
focus
like,
more on her.
But I think learning where she is right now actually feel like new stuff, because we've seen Obsidian in a few of these stories, but Jade's been a little more absent, and I think that felt more, because I think Roy's story in the second one, his just kind of feels like Roy's around, he's alive, and will he be good? Will he go down a dark path again? Because Roy can do that from time to time. He does some fighting, we're reminded he's a good person, and that's it. Like, that's the whole thing.
No, he likes to hang out in diners and fight truckers. That's all I learned in that issue.
Yeah, there was nothing like important about it on its own. I think I appreciated the first one as someone who's not read as much of the President Superman stuff. I think this was a nice little taste of it. If you've not read much of this character, this will show you who he is, how he operates in his world as both being president and being Superman. And it's like, okay, all right. And I got to the end of this and went, oh, well, I liked having that one because I didn't necessarily had as much experience with him. But are all of these going to just be like, here's who this character is? Now, it turned out they weren't, because the back half of them are all different. The back half of them aren't that at all.
No. But yeah, like you said, it's nice having a Calvin Ellis story that you can point to that's not multiversity.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's really the only place he's popped up. And there might have been some stuff in Morrison's Action Comics. There might have been an issue with him.
I mean, he's popped up for cameos a lot, but that's the main story that he comes from.
Just to basically have a day in a life and see how he balances being Superman of his world and the president, I thought was pretty funny. And he has a Helix that is almost like his assistant in the White House, which I thought was fun. That's managing his time through the day. And then you find out he ends up going to basically a sensory deprivation room where he, with all the time that he has extra from the day to spend away from the sounds and sights and smells of the world, just to reset his head. And I really like that character beat there.
Yeah, I concur. And the art in that first one's pretty solid as well, I think.
It's Brandon Thomas, who I feel like that's a name. All of these writers that are working with Williamson, I feel these are the next, quiver of writers DC is going to be going to.
I will say, though, I did think the two Brandon Thomas, which is the Totality, I thought those were the two wordy ones where I felt like they were a bit too stacked in the word department.
And Brandon Thomas also did the Mr. Miracle that we skipped issue 2 on. I think I'm pretty sure that's him.
So that's a trend then. What you're saying?
Yeah.
It's a
So
trend.
that's just his style, I feel. But yeah, and then Stephanie Phillips did the Roy story, right?
Yeah, which I actually thought was fairly well written. It just didn't feel like
Yeah.
it offered that much.
No, it felt like one of these, digital first type stories. That like you said earlier, if this was in an anthology, this would just be the Roy, Infinite Frontier story. But for this to be, issue 2 and whatnot in the spotlight, it was just again, like you said, well written. But all I learned from this is Roy Harper, now that he's back, and this hit before Infinite, right? Because these came out weekly originally. This is before we realized that there's something more going on.
Yeah, so only the last couple would have been after issue 1 came out, I think.
Right.
The third story it's not surprising because they basically kind of the first 3 of them. This is the same teams on the next 3, or at least the writers are anyway. But and I don't think it's a surprise because Joshua Williamson co-plotted all of the stories with the writers, and then they went off and wrote the scripts. And I don't think it's a surprise that story number 3 and 6 in this are the 2 best ones because they're both Dan Waters and Joshua Williamson, I think. So, well, I think they're both the best. I think not. I mean, I know that those creators.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah,
but yeah, and Stephen Byrne art on the Jade and Obsidian, which his Jade, just because he works with those soft lines so well that the color seemingly pops on Jade so well, and then the lack of color on Obsidian, it just
really well done.
Just perfect match.
Obviously walking into the Shadowlands, and I think the idea of the story being that she's scared that she doesn't want to go flying because she's worried that the Starheart might one day stop keeping her up in the air and she might fall to her death, basically. And, so that's the basic gist of the idea, and the point of the story is that. Yeah, like the world might end tomorrow. It might end in a week. It might end in a month, a year. It might not end for another 10 million years. You don't know, so there's no point in worrying about it. There's no point in holding back. So, and it has an ending. It has an arc because at the end of the story, she does take off and flies. So I think this is one of the better ones, is because it does have a full arc for the character, and because the character who's not been around much, it gives us a nice sense of where she is right now. It gives us a nice sense of. This does serve as a really good introduction to these 2 characters, I think. You do have the weird thing with the villain who's going to sing the song that's going to kill the planet, and basically Todd convinces her to go into the Shadowlands and sing in that instead.
Right.
And as she puts it, it'll take her between 20 minutes and 20 million years to finish, destroying the Shadowlands, and that just ties into the whole theme of the story, which is, it could be today, it could be, ages from now.
Yeah, it's Jade overcoming fear, right? Very Green Lantern-y take on it. But no, so I did look up Chroma, and Chroma goes back to the Infinity Inc. days where Jade and Obsidian started. Oh, I had no doubt this was a pull.
Yeah. I didn't think this was a new character.
So to see that, and to see that it didn't affect Obsidian back then, so that's why he's able to figure it out. But then
I mean, hell, even when she shows up, they reference having seen her before. She's like, I knew I wasn't going to come back to Earth, but then Earth got reborn, so it's different. The frequencies are different. Well, the vibe is different.
And just with Jenny having that, like, I was gone, but now I'm back, and just all that uneasiness to go along with Chroma saying that with the vibrational frequencies, that's almost kind of the first hint of where we're going to go in 5 and 6. Right? Like, there's that tease a little there. But yeah, no, it was the Stephen Byrne art too. So far, this was the one where the art, I was just like, oh man.
This was the thing perfect. Where, because I was reading these digitally, so I had the 6 individual things, right? So I read the first 2, I took a break, and I was like, those were fine, but I wasn't necessarily in love with them. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about not reading the rest, but I was sort of thinking like, if the next one feels like this, maybe I won't necessarily feel compelled to read them all. I can come in and just talk about the ones I read. But then I read this and went, oh wait, if they can be like this, then I'm in for the whole batch.
I was going to tell you to make sure you read at least 5 because I know how much you love Director Bones, and he's kind of front and center in that one.
Yeah, because 5 changes things up, and it becomes a Bones like in the DEO itself, and it's they've captured Boomerang. Actually, no, I was skipping over 4 here. Let's do 4
Yeah,
first.
I was gonna say which was the one where he was looking for his whiskey, and he kept yelling for Mildred.
I think that was 4.
Okay?
Because I want to say that was before he had the whole focus where he's running around.
Yeah. Okay. I love that background spot. That as he's listening to the tapes, he's emptied his flask, and he needs more, and he yells for Mildred to, hey, bring me the expensive stuff. As this, I don't want to say crisis because that means completely different with the totality. As this thing is going on with 2 sets of the totality.
Do you know? Do you know what's so funny about the setup that each of these starts with Bones listening to a tape and that like sets into the stories? Is I kind of it gave me this weird like he's kind of like a crypt keeper, but then you have the whole shadowy government kind of vibe to it as well. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take an anthology version of this where it's just Bones like sort of like saying, oh, these are all the secret files from all the cases of the multiverse, and just like tell different stories.
Yeah, he's very entertaining too.
I'll do
his commentary on these. But yeah, so this you have the totality, who's Martian Manhunter, Talia, Mr. Terrific, Hot Girl,
and
Lex, and Vandal Savage.
Yeah, basically they do an experiment and they and them and also the totality of the same batch of characters from Earth 23 run into each other. A fight breaks out, and it's kind of about the Jean of Earth 23 wanting to see if our Jean can actually trust his team. So he pretends to be their Jean in the psychic like meeting room, and tries to like say as an imposter here, one of you have been like overtaken by the Earth 23 version, and ultimately they one by one kind of rule each other out and then say it has to be Jean, it has to be him. And this proves to him that even though you're a bunch of different characters and some of you are villains, you all immediately went to work together, so therefore cool,
you're trustworthy. My favorite part in this was Lex going, I'm here to prove that Mr. Terrific's not smarter than me. And the fact that rung the bell for Martian Manhunter, right? I was like, okay, yep, that checks out. That's really Lex. I just love Petty Lex.
Oh sure, I have no complaint. I mean, I like this. I thought it was a little bit like almost like too much to stuff in, because I got a little bit confused a little early on with the multiple versions, and then the first time they went into the like the mind meeting room.
Well, you had to remember that from Snyder's Justice League that was their thing, right? That Martian Manhunter would bring them all in there. But yeah, I also love that. I want more of why Vandal Savage of Earth 23 and Calvin Ellis hate each other so much. Because I did like that little thing too.
Yeah, because he shows up and they all like the Martian Manhunters like make everyone invisible to him, but he says that he can still smell them.
Yeah. That you can't hide certain things even from him. So yeah. But no, yeah, it was good. But you're right, it was wordy. I know.
Lex wears the same cologne in both worlds. It was also one of the lines.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it was enjoyable. Do you know what I think it is? I think this one would have been perfectly fine had it been a regular 20-page comic. I think it being shrunken into the 12 or 13 pages was maybe just a little bit too packed.
Yeah.
But certainly not bad. And then the 5th story, which is the Boomerang Bones, where Boomerang, because of what happened to him in Death Metal, where he became kind of this monster, he still has that in him, and Bones realizes that he still has this dark energy in him. So he traps him, triggers this. Boomerang's not happy about being, taken in or anything, obviously. And I think my favorite part of all this is one, Bones running away scared and shouting for Mildred's really funny. But I love that Boomerang, in like his Hulk form, rips off like a bone sticking out and tries to use it as a boomerang. I
love that.
Wonderful.
And then Bones goes, Mildred, he's throwing his bones at me. That made me laugh so hard. And this is where I'm with Stephanie Phillips. I would love to read more of her work, but right now she's doing Harley with Riley Rosmo art. And I can't
of course
do it. But you're talking about the Bones anthology. I feel like her voice for Bones really is great here. But yeah, and just that whole dark energy and Boomerang not remembering that he died, and so Bones asking him these questions like, I don't know what you're going on with, man, but yeah, not me, not this
Yeah.
Boomerang. Which
And
I also love that famously up until Rebirth he was he was dead, right, killed in Identity Crisis. So there's some double stuff going on here.
yeah, and the story ends with him trapping Boomerang in sort of a big sort of trapped electrical shock room so that he can take him down. So they have Boomerang held captive, and the tape that we're hearing throughout this notably is talking about Bones, and it is still Bones listening to it at the end. So the idea is that Chase has made a tape about Bones, and he's like, I need a drink.
and how weird Bones is, because he's never like, even though he was a bad guy, right? He's always kind of been on the side of order, and that his motivations were different because of such the weird being that he is. So, which again, I like that perspective on Bones. That he's perfect. He's perfect to be a bureaucrat because he plays his own side.
Yeah. So, yeah, somewhat enjoyable. It definitely feels like it definitely feels like it picks up. I think 3, 5, and 6 are the ones that really stuck out to me as being really worth reading, and then the other ones are fine, to varying degrees.
I was shocked how much I enjoyed issue 5. That was for sure.
It's just one of those things where you have to get through just a couple of okay first parts, and then you kind of get into some of the more meaty stuff.
Yeah, when I messaged you to start and you said you were finishing these, and you told me which one you were on, had you not been on 6, I would have said make sure you read 5, because I really think you'd dig that one.
Yeah. No, I was on the last one anyway. I was. Yeah. Admittedly, I was running a little bit late, so I didn't get a time we would do a Patreon book, which means you're going to get 2 of those next week.
Gotcha.
So, look forward to that. But yeah, so the last one, of course, is Bones. He's looking at a photo of Psycho Pirate, and he's like, "Oh, I hate this guy." Right? And he tries to play the tape, and it's just like screaming, right?
Yeah.
And it cuts to away. So instead of getting like a tape playing, like it's still bookends. Like Bones trying to listen to this tape bookends the story. But when we come back to him later, he just sort of like takes the headphones off because it just sounds horrible. And he's like, "Oh, okay, I need to go and bring in Chase," which actually leads us into the scene that he had with her in issue 1. So that's kind of neat. But the story's about this character who's looking for, what turns out to be Psycho Pirate.
Right.
And the Lonely Man is what he keeps referring to him as, the narration. And Psycho Pirate's got his mask on the table. He finds him in this building, and he puts the mask on this guy. And the idea is that Psycho Pirate's going to test them with 3 questions, and if he gets them right, he'll be allowed to, I don't know, ascend and be with them, or
so he'll share the power of the Medusa mask, which is why he's the Lonely Man, because no one has ever been able to pass the 3-question test. Hence why he's the Lonely Man. And this guy makes a push, and
he tries
this is definitely the most philosophical comic issue I've read in a while. It was reminding me of when you talk about Animal Man, and this whole meta context of gods and creatures and creators and whatnot. I was getting that vibe because it's almost being told in like the first person from Psycho Pirate as you're reading the book. You know what I mean? Like, but the guy comes close because one of, it's like one of the questions.
Question. Well, I've got it in front of me.
First question.
Question 1 is, what can we know? And the guy's answer is basically, well, we can only know what our senses are willing to let us know, as is ultimately the answer. And he's like, okay, good answer. All right, that's not bad. Second question is, what is real? Is the second question. And then the guy says, well, our emotions are real. Like, the sources of the emotions can be fake, they can be fabricated, but the emotions themselves, if we're bored, we're just bored.
We are bored.
Yeah.
Right. We're furious. We're furious.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, raged. Okay, not bad. All right, you got 2 out of 3. So that's all right. But then the third question, if I just find it here, is who are you? And he says, I'm only a man. I'm a fry cook. I'm this, I'm that. And basically this is the one that he doesn't like the answer to. He says, "Oh, you're just a poser. So it's all posture. You don't really know what you're talking about." And Psychopirate basically lets the mask kill him. And it's a great page actually because
Yep.
all of these pages with this guy have all been just against just a table and two chairs in a completely dark black room. And then this final page where the guy dies, the background goes away, it's all white, and we just see like the mask has this sort of like scared expression on it, and then the guy just keels over and dies. But it's like all, instead of being in panels, because up until now it's all been very rigid 6 square panels, whereas you get to this page and it's all overlapping and the guy's falling over, everything's like a Dutch angle. It feels like just complete chaos and like his head's spinning kind of thing. So the art's really good there, what I'm saying, I guess.
Right. And there's talk of the Psycho Pirate has always survived. He's almost outside of the multiverse. That he's almost a unique being, as that it's only him that's there.
Yes, but that's when the narration starts to come back in, and Psycho Pirate hears it, and he says, like, who is that? Who is speaking? And he's still in the plain white, he's picking up the mask, and he's saying, who is that? Who's somehow made it to the other side of everything? Who else could be here? And the narration says, you really think you are outside of everything, that there is nothing beyond in your enlightened perspective. And as he's that last panel at the bottom of that page, like, there's sort of there's just the edges of the white panels, because it's the white background still, but just the edges of like the sort of blacks coming in, as if the camera's pulling back. And then the next page is he's in a white circle with black around it. Then the middle page, you get that that's a period or a full stop at the end of a sentence, and you get the last letter, and then the panel at the bottom of that page is just the text that says Darkseid is, which this is the first time that this has properly been used, I think, since Mr. Miracle. Like, in terms of like a mainstream continuity comic that's used it as a big, like, I think there's maybe been like a joke that's referred to or something, or there's been like a throwaway line, but this is the first time it's been used as a dramatic beat for Darkseid in a main DC comic since Mr. Miracle. I think.
And once the dialogue or the narration boxes started getting that more wild kind of lettering, I could kind of feel it. Now, granted, we kind of know what's going on with Darkseid because we'd read Infinite Frontier 1. But when you got to that and it all came together with the Darkseid is, you're like, oh, man, they got me good on this one.
Yeah, this is the one that feels important. This is the one, if nothing else feels important in this batch of 6 stories, this is the one that feels the most pertinent.
Like, I feel like if they don't collect all of these, right? I mean, they already did in the 6th issue. That's what I picked them up on. This one definitely will be in the trade for Infinite Frontier. Most of them probably will be, all of them, but let's say weird happenstance. This one is definitely almost like Infinite Frontier.
It probably
0.5.
None of them will probably be in the first trade, but when they do a more like complete edition, that's when they'll probably throw them all in.
Sure.
Maybe an omnibus or whatever, I don't know. So, and Darkseid says he's on Earth Omega, and of course that's where obviously this new Omega planet is the one that he's on. Of course it is. At the end of all things there is a spirit, blah blah. At the end of all things there is Darkseid. Will you join me? Would you want me to remake you so that you might not be alone? And of course we saw Psycho Pirate with a completely new look. So when he says yes, seriously, of course he said yes, because we already saw him looking different. And he says, then it is done. And then it cuts back to Bones, and he takes off the headphones, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go get Chase. So this last story sets up Psycho Pirate, and it sets up, to an extent, the Bones going to meet Chase.
And again, the voice for, that Dan Waters uses here for him, he goes, oh, how I hate you, Psycho Pirate. So very, very much. Like, it's just a good little tag.
Yeah. Because I like the idea that he tried to play this tape and all he got was unfiltered emotions off of wherever it came from.
Yeah. So here's a theory. If this is the first time we've seen Darkseid is, right, and that since Mr. Miracle, and we know how that ended with the death of Darkseid via Veggie Tray, what if this Darkseid is that Darkseid from Mr. Miracle? Huh?
That sounds very fan-fictiony to me.
I don't don't know.
That sounds a little hokey.
We'll see where it goes.
I'm not going to say, like, I think it could work if they pull it off in the right way, but I will say that upon hearing that, it sounds a bit hokey, and I hope you're wrong.
We'll see. I mean, you always hope I'm wrong, you know?
That's not true.
Yeah.
I always hope Connor's wrong. There's a difference.
Well, that's, But yeah, so, no, this was a very good issue.
Yes. Yeah, the last story was really good. I think the Jade and Obsidian one was really good too, and I think the Boomerang one was a lot of fun with Bones. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'd say it's not essential, but a couple of them are really good, and the last one feels definitely very close to being a nice little lead into the first issue. So I would say it's a nice companion if you want to get a bit more of Infinite Frontier right now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty much it. We practically skipped over the Roy story because there wasn't really much to say about it. He's in a bar fight.
He's in a bar fight, and the lady helps him out, but reminds him of someone that he once knew. And it's assumed that he means Cheshire. So, but yeah, he gets mad and he gets into bar fights. What's not to love about Roy Harper?
I mean, that's not why I like it, but Roy Harper. That's your mentality. So that's why you like Guy Gardner. It's that warped way of thinking about. Okay, what are you rating Infinite Frontier Secret Files issue 1?
I'm gonna give us a 7.5, but like you said, 4 and 5 and even 3 are doing a lot of the heavy lifting there.
Not 6.
I think that's what I meant. I meant 5, 3, 5, and 6.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. No, I'll give it a 7. I think it's an enjoyable enough. I think in a week 5 especially, it was a fine thing to sort of fill out the week with, but a couple of nice things in there. It's a weird week to talk about because it's not a lot of big things. Catwoman obviously is the one main like ongoing thing that's going on. That's what makes it ongoing because it's going on. English, I use it well.
Gotcha.
Thank you. All right. That'll take us out of the part of the show where we pick our favorite stuff of the week. So, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and I guess we'll rank the 3 books that we read. So,
yeah,
favorite panel / moment.
Oof. I don't know if there's a ton to choose from, but I'll go from Green Arrow, and it's at from the Ayala story with Dinah. Where she does the scream, and you have the concentric circles, all different parts of the fight, done by Laura Braga. That's a pretty good moment.
Yeah, I have to go with Darkseid Is. Like, I got a nice little chill when it revealed the Darkseid Is text. I can't fault it. Best cover, Matt. What you got?
I'm going with the Green Arrow variant. I think it's the 80s variant by Gary Frank. It is fantastic looking.
Gary Frank variant. What shock. I'll surprise you a little bit, but mainly because I didn't look through all the covers for Green Arrow, so I don't really know which ones I like. So I'm going to go with the variant for Catwoman, which is a very moody, painted. It's got Catwoman then behind her, Father Valley. So it's a really nice thing. I particularly like the no, that's Liam Sharp as the
it's Sharp. Yeah, it's Sharpie
variant. But I particularly like there's this sort of like effect on the eyes where there's like a streak of light coming from them, which looks really nice. I really like that. So I'm going to go with that one. What is your best art's a bit weird here because everything had tons of artists.
Yeah, dude. Do we pick a story or do
you know what? I think for a 1 week thing, because 2 of them were anthology style, I will say let's just pick one story as your art of the week.
Gotcha. Even though I had trouble with the coloring, I could not pick Nicola Scott's and Tom Taylor's Wildcat Green Arrow story. That's really good. Shouts to Stephen Byrne for Jade and Obsidian. Laura Braga for Green Arrow, and then of course Sorrentino and Schmidt. But think Nicola Scott just edges them out.
this is I actually think I'm going to go with Sorrentino on this.
There you go.
I think just in terms of blow away art, that was the one that kind of struck me. Even though I'm not as attached to the run that that pair comes from, there's no denying that Sorrentino art was fantastic. So that's my pick. Okay, I guess.
There you go.
All right. Do you know what? This is such a weird week, right? Because I feel like, I mean, depending on how you do it, I mean, either you're going to be saying Green Arrow, Catwoman, and Infinite Frontier, or you're going to say Catwoman, Green Arrow, Infinite Frontier, right? That's basically the order. Which way around is it? Just the audience knows.
Oh, yeah, it's Green Arrow, Catwoman, Infinite Frontier.
I'd probably flip it. I'd probably put Catwoman first.
Yeah.
But just to make this a little bit more interesting, since it's a weird week, I'm going to say rank the top 3 Green Arrow stories from the anthology book. So instead of doing a normal top 5, since it's a weird concoction.
So for my first one for Green Arrow, I'll go with the Devin Grayson story because that was really good, and then I'll go with the Tom Taylor, Nicola Scott one, and then the third one I'll do Ben Percy and Otto Schmidt.
Okay. Certainly not bad choices. I'm going with Devin Grayson first as well. I think that was the standout. I think I have to go Tap 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 for second.
Oh, God damn it! That's also the art would have been George Fornes. I spaced on that one. It made me so emotional. I walled it away like I do everything else. And that's a good choice though too.
Healthy, Matt. Healthy.
Yeah, I'm in therapy.
So that's number 2, and then number 3 would be probably a Tom Taylor one at number 3. I would say, Tom Taylor at number 3, The Punching Evil, just as sort of being my favorite sort of fun one. But okay, there you go. And let's
do top 3 Infinite Frontier. What order are you putting them in?
Oh, okay, sure. I'll go Psycho Pirate is number 1. Number 2 is Jade and Obsidian. Number 3 is issue 5 with Bones and Boomerang.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll go issue 5 with Bones and Boomerang, and then Psycho Pirate, and then Jade and Obsidian.
All right.
What if I went rogue and said Roy number 1? I secretly loved it.
I would say, why are you lying to yourself, Matt? What are you doing? What's wrong with you?
Oh, shoot. Well, hey, what's up next week?
That's what I was just getting to. The first comic week of Giant. Now, I'm hoping it's not a huge week because I'm now backed up on Patreon books, but we'll find out. So, coming out this coming week, we have Batman 110, we have Justice League 64, we have Nice House in the Lake issue 2. Oh, I'm looking forward to that. Swamp Thing issue 5, I'm looking forward to that. Wonder Girl issue 2, I'm looking forward to that. This is getting bad. Green Lantern. That's Green Arrow's on the brain. Green Lantern issue 4 is out. Suicide Squad issue 5. Batman Fortnite 0 Point issue 6 is out. Crime Syndicate issue 5. The next Batman Second Son issue 4, so that's the last of those physical reprints of that. Batman The Adventure Continues season 2. Sensational Wonder Woman issue 5. Crushing Lobo issue 2. Justice League Infinity issue 1, which is GM DeMeaty's miniseries. So and then we got Batman Secret Files, the Signal issue 1. So that's the first of those one shots that are going to be coming out monthly. Although I think there's 2 in the first month, but it's mostly going to be a monthly thing where like a Bat character gets a spotlight issue. I think it's
spotlight. Yeah.
Which is cool because it's all the characters that don't have books, so rock on. And then The Conjuring the Lover issue 2 is also out. So it's a pretty exciting week, honestly. I mean, more of Tynion's Batman, more Nice House in the Lake, more Swamp Thing, more Wonder Girl, more Green Lantern. It's a pretty nifty week, all things considered. So, cool. What are you looking forward to most next week, Matt?
Probably Swamp Thing because that books have been real good. But Wonder Girl's a close second.
It's tough because I feel like there's like 4 or 5 things next week that are all kind of high in my can't wait to read status.
Tell you what I'm not reading, and that's The Conjuring.
Oh yeah, me neither. Yeah,
done with
definitely.
that.
Wouldn't. Yeah,
So,
yeah. That was a surefire drop, that one. So
yep.
that's cool. All right, that's what's coming next week. I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers of Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Boardnow, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. Not Stanley.
Stanley. Excelsior.
You can, of course, go and support us on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and get a bunch of bonuses for your trouble. Obviously, the producers are one of the higher tiers, but you can, at the $5 tier, get access to the show a day early. So go and have a look and see if you're interested in helping keep all the content coming. And you can, of course, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment down below. It's always nice to see comments and to have people talk about the books they're enjoying and their thoughts on this week's books. Not that there was a big list this week, admittedly, but please do. Get us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast, and that's about all the things I have to tell you about, I think. So, yeah. So it was a interesting, weird week of 2 really long books and an annual, but I am looking forward to the regular chapters because DC are actually putting out a lot of good stuff right now, and a lot of it's out next week, so we'll see
true.
that then.
True.
Yeah. But that's about it. So for the first time in a while, we're not much over 2 hours for this one. So
yeah,
thank you.
Removing some talk of Dynamite. I'm sure we'll be below it.
That's a good point. Yeah, we spoke for like 20 minutes about Dynamite that I'm probably going to cut out and put on Patreon. So yeah, this is probably a sub 2 hour episode, which is, I mean, I guess it makes sense given the week, but
yeah. We'll make up for it next week, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Especially if Connor's back, because that guy.
Oh yeah, he never shuts up. I know. But thank you once again for joining us for Comics From The Multiverse, episode 260, and we will be back next week with 261. So keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.
And punch crime, even with the boxing glove arrow.